Right? I'm not 80. I know how this works. What's up, homies? Yo, what's up?
What is up?
How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Definitely a lot better than the last phone call we had. But I
Yeah.
was like a
Yeah.
couple weeks out from the
Right.
show.
How did you went to what Costa Rica, right?
Yeah, I did go to Costa Rica actually. It
How was
was
that?
beautiful. Honestly, it was so nice, and I genuinely didn't realize like how desperately my body but also my mind needed it
Mhm.
to like really just like slow down. They had a gym at the resort, but I was I was basically told it was like a full-blown gym. But then when I got there, I realized that it was like
Is it
dumbbells only up to like 60 pounds. There was like definitely a really good like pull down machine and a good like seated row setup. Like it was all just cable, like a big cable station. So like I had a really good back day there. But then besides that, it was like there wasn't enough weight for me to like have a good shoulder pump or a chest pump. So like I kind of just did some like some pump work. But then like the last 3 days of my trip, I was just like, hey, I'm going home to like be able to train on some like real heavy machines again. This is like a perfect kind of time to just give myself like a mini deload, so to speak, and just like take 3 days completely off. And then I came home like super refreshed, like ready to kill it. So feeling good.
That's good, bro. Is that the most tropical place you've ever been to?
Honestly, I've done like a nice few all inclusives. Like I've actually done like six at this point in time. We're like down in like Caribbean kind of areas, but Costa Rica was like definitely by far my favorite spot. Usually like in the past I've gone to like Dominican or something along those lines. It's like okay, like I've been here, I've seen this, it was nice, but like I'm good now. But this place, both me and my girlfriend, because we've kind of both done all inclusive together a nice few times now. We were both like, yeah, we're definitely gonna come back here. Like this was definitely one to revisit. And I'm usually the type of person like I don't really do things more than one time. And I'm good unless it's Florida because I of course have a little soft spot for Florida since I'm there like every year, every second year.
It's worth it.
Um, but yeah, no, it was beautiful. Like food was great, service was great. The people really make or break any place, and all the people down there were just awesome. Not to mention like the weather was great. You're basically in Central America, so I haven't actually been directly in the jungle in Central America before. So like definitely a little bit of a different tropical environment, but like so nice weather-wise. And like got to see some really nice volcanoes and some like really nice mountaintops. So I was basically just like hiking and swimming. I was doing some like some sea doing and like you know snorkeling and that kind of stuff, but it was pretty much just like a really good like rest and relaxation trip. I clearly ate probably like 12 to 100 times my body weight in food while I was there, which is like perfect for me because I had actually like this issue that I had last year post show I had this year but like tenfold.
Really?
So it was kind of like yeah, because last year basically I kind of ran into the situation. Oh, here I'm giving thumbs up again already. Woohoo, let's go. Um, but yeah, like last year after my show, I was like running really hot.
Mhm.
And just for anybody watching, what I mean by that is I was got really lean, and obviously my insulin sensitivity was like really good at its peak, but it actually was like I guess most people wouldn't think about this as a negative. But like last year
You went
it
hiking
took
every 2 seconds. Yeah.
well last year I wasn't full blown going hypo all the time, but like I couldn't put on any weight and I was eating so much food and I was just like trying to get myself out of this like
Was
extremely
that
crazy low body fat
not
percentage, and
not
it
to cut
wasn't.
you off? Let me ask you a question about that though. Was
Yeah.
that post show or was that like for peak week?
So I'm referencing my show like a year ago, like my first bodybuilding show I did. That was essentially. Sorry, what was your question again?
Was that like your super high insulin sensitivity? Was that post show or
Yeah,
like
yeah,
when you?
yeah.
Okay.
So it was like really honestly like it happens during peak week.
Yeah.
Um and then it's almost like as soon as my body gets carbs again, it starts running even hotter than it was during the end of prep. So, for most people they're like, oh well that's great, you just can eat whatever you want and then, you don't have to worry about it. But it's like this year it was actually a serious problem because I know me and you spoke privately about this.
Mhm.
But like I was going hypo multiple times during my peak week, but then post show I was also going hypo a bunch. Like there was multiple times when I was down in Costa Rica, like an hour after eating a meal, I was going hypo, like full blown, like eyes fluttering, like almost passing out. um so it's like, obviously that's not really ideal, and it doesn't really feel very good when, like, 1 minute you're fine, and then a couple minutes later you're like saturated in sweat head to toe, and you're like, where's the fucking floor gone?
Right.
It's, not exactly the most enjoyable way to enjoy a vacation, but like I managed it totally fine. But like I was in Costa Rica like 2 weeks post show because like I spent a week and a half in Toronto because I wanted to train at Pure Muscle and Fitness and like have some awesome post show pumps, and a nice few of my friends live up there and whatnot, so we were getting some workouts in. Um, but it was like really like I figured that would be like well like dealt with before I went on my vacation down to Costa Rica, and nope, not whatsoever. I was just burning hotter and hotter.
So
So it literally took me a month post show before I could like my body like kind of like restabilized, and I
yeah,
wasn't like burning through like crazy. So I even did when I got home from the show, or sorry, from my trip, I got a blood glucose tester from one of my buddies, and brought it home with me for the night. And I checked my blood sugars like first thing fast in the morning while this was still an issue before I kind of fixed it. And I was waking up fast with a 1.6 glucose. And for reference, for anybody that doesn't know much about blood glucose, like that's like
no,
really not good. That's
yeah,
like you should be going to the hospital, homie. So like you should not be getting a reading under 2.0. Really, your fasted in the morning should be like around a 4. So that was super low. And then I even went as far as, okay, I'm going to check it post cranial. So like, that 45 hour minute window after eating a meal, and I was still only getting a reading of like 4.8, which post meal timings in up to that like 90-minute
yeah. That's
mark, you should be in between like a 7 and a
yeah.
9. So basically, with also getting some blood work done, I came to the conclusion that my body somehow which I, I don't know if it's induced by some of the PEDs that I'm also using while I'm on prep,
Mhm.
which is obviously why I took a deep dive in my blood work this time around. But I was like literally having like an extreme overproduction of insulin. So I'm not diabetic, but essentially my body was going into this like way too insulin sensitivity point that I was just burning and burning and burning and burning. So like I would literally eat carbs, like eat a mouthful of them, and within like 90 seconds have to go
So
pee because my body would
did you increase your fat intake at all to kind of slow down that absorption, or were you
big
just?
time,
I'm sure, yeah,
big
yeah.
time. I'm
And it,
currently like this past week specifically, my fat is intake is almost 2.5 times what it usually is.
has that worked though, like over time?
Yes.
Okay, that's at least that does show that you're not, fucked with diabetes. Yeah, that's good, then. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it was definitely like a big learning curve, for sure. Because it's also like this happened last year, but not to the same extent, and then it happened again this year. So I was like, okay, no, I don't know anybody else that has this much of an insulin sensitivity issue post show. Because honestly, I've competed in 2 shows now, and both times, like 90% of the people that I compete with, like literally a couple days post show, everyone does that like go out the night of the show and eat whatever you want, and then kind of the same thing the next day. And most people like have a pretty huge weight increase and kind of look like water buffaloes because of how much they retain from all that food and sodium that they are eating that their body hasn't been consuming for months on end. Whereas my body, it's like I eat it and it's like immediately gone. Like, so there were some mornings I was waking up lighter than what I was on show day after eating like over 12,000 calories a day before. So it's like, so now like obviously now I'm able to like readjust kind of what I'm going to be doing stack design
Yeah, that was
wise to
yeah. Okay, fair
kind
enough.
of make
I was gonna ask about that. So, not someone asking me where do you buy testosterone as we're on this line. Anyways, what was I gonna
did
say?
someone just
Um,
ask you that? I
yeah,
didn't
like damn. Anyways,
I
that
didn't even
vehicle.
see that come through.
No, it was like my DMs. I guess because I'm on Instagram, I'm still receiving DMs and
Yeah,
such. But
yeah,
um,
yeah, fair.
so. obviously not to get into specifics there, but do you use like what do you think specifically, if you're comfortable? Oh my God, still going with the DMs. What do you think specifically led to that like super hypoglycemic state?
Honestly, I think that it's a combination of I also got like lean really early for my show this year because I was testing out different prep
Right, right,
approaches.
right.
So I think that it was a combination of I was honestly almost like show ready at like 7 weeks out. Like I could have like pushed it hard for a week and like been ready for the stage. And then I stayed in that leanness state for a very extended period of time, continuously pushing myself further into depletion. Um, on top of that, someone said, what country? I'm in Canada, but my man is in the States. Why we do FaceTimes and we don't do the podcast live. um, but yeah, so like it was a combination of me just being like super lean for a long time that my insulin sensitivity was just like getting like extremely high. But I also do think that I'm an individual who doesn't not need to use as much T3, if any at all, during a prep, and I
Okay.
can
All
prep
right.
fine without it.
Mhm.
I clearly don't need my thyroid to be
Absolutely.
overly activated
Yeah.
because, you know, my thyroid and my pancreas do that just fine on
Okay,
their own.
so I don't want to. I know that we spoke privately about coaching and stuff, but is that something that you implemented yourself, or was it someone you were working with was like, hey, this is naturally what we do at this point in the game?
Yeah, so basically, like for like pretty much my whole prep, I was doing all of my own food and all my own training. Now I did also have a coach that was paid to help me with my prep as well, who I worked with for my last prep. And my last prep I did, I let him do absolutely everything. So he did all of my food, all of my training, all of my supplements. This go around, I was like, okay, here's a couple of the issues that I had with my package last time. I know what I need to adjust food and training wise to fix the things that I think were an issue, but I also do think that there was a slight issue, hey, hey, with the supplementation side of things. But I was like, I do want to use a couple different things than I used last time, aka take some things out and put other things in to see if we have a little bit of a different reaction. Um, so I basically, first time using a new compound, I basically wanted to have somebody else who's used it for like 10 years have that side eye on me. So I was following, even though I was doing all my own food and nutrition, I was following PED recommendations from my coach. So there was a couple times where, he had suggested, okay, I think we should bump up to this amount. And I was like, I don't think we need to be honest. Like, I think we're good to stay here. So there were a couple times that I kind of like pushed back and we're like, I don't think we need more right now, because I don't always think that more is the answer. I oftentimes think that less is always more in most case scenarios. So yeah, so like, even though I was following what he was saying, I was still kind of giving my own input at the same time. But without getting all this blood work done and having this like in-depth view of what actually was taking place, then I wouldn't have disagreed with what he was saying at the time. Now that I have more in-depth look at what was happening under the hood, now I do feel differently. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, no, I
So
get what you're saying, but I guess my question with T3, obviously you have the real world application of that. Isn't that something that's like, okay, bro, like we really like you're really not pushing it right now. Like we really have to ramp things up in terms of rate of loss, and then you implement that because I know that some people kind of have this like this is how we approach prep. These are the PEDs we have to use, and this is just baseline, as opposed to, hey, why don't we add this in if you're really stagnant? Like which do you know what I'm saying? Like, which approach do you feel like was given to you? Because
I
if
think the
and then
approach that was given to me,
you say what?
I think the approach that was given to me was like, this is what we should be using at X amount of weeks out. So we're going to use this. Not necessarily that.
You
So
need it.
do I agree with that approach? No.
Okay,
Just to,
that's
just to,
you get what I'm saying, right?
just
Yeah.
to clarify,
Okay.
I think the approach should be like you just said. We're not getting the rate of loss where we need to be. This is something that's going to help with that. So we should start to bring this in and titrate it in. right? I don't necessarily think that it's like, oh, just because everybody else does it at 10 weeks out, we do it at 10 weeks out. Everybody else brings this in at 6 weeks out, so we now bring this in 6 weeks out. That is a load of bullshit, and I'm sorry, but that's just lazy programming, and that's not a coach designing,
Well,
a stack specifically for you, your risk profile, but also what you actually need at that current moment in time.
and then you said that
So,
you're already like 7 weeks out. That doesn't indicate that you should need T3. Like, if you're
and
ready to
exactly,
go, I can push it in 1 week. Why are you implementing something that's gonna fuck with your thyroid? Like, that doesn't make a ton of
exactly,
sense. But
100%. And
yeah,
like that's one thing that I said, and it was like, well, there is this like hardness. It's like that really, really hard, grainy look that we're trying to go for. So it was like basically told to me like we're gonna need this in order to get this brought out. But looking back at it now, I disagree with that, and I think that it was more of a generalized, you know, approach versus like this is exactly what we need specifically for this specific case scenario. Because I like to do things like with my own clients, it's very much so like based on the
yeah,
situation,
yeah.
not based on X amount of weeks, if that makes
It,
sense.
it's the only thing that makes sense actually. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the that's the biggest thing with me, bro. I'm trying to think of with bodybuilding specifically because lifestyle stuff, even though it's not like it's not the same thing, right? Like it's generally people are not trying to get super peeled, like people want to get lean and stuff like that. But when it comes to bodybuilding specific, you're fucking with things that I mean, look how hypo you went. Like you told me at some point, then you like pass out in a parking garage or something like that. Like that's
So,
very much so like not awesome, right? So I feel like there are tons of like coaches who, like they know a lot of stuff and they look good themselves. And then like we see they may have a couple of clients that look fantastic. Even like look what happened with Matt. I don't have any giant feelings around that because obviously I don't know the ins and outs. But it's a good example of someone could have like, especially with bodybuilding, someone could have like four superstar clients and then you're like, damn, like this is a good ass coach. And then when you actually see the back end of things, you might be like, actually, I don't agree with what's going on here. And then it's kind of like this power dynamic. And that's one thing I've grabbed from you as well is kind of not undermining because that's a negative term, but challenging that power dynamic when it comes to like how I approach coaching as well. It's like, hey, like I'm just somebody who's helping you achieve your goals. So if you ever feel like you want to approach things differently or anything like that, like it's an open conversation. But would you agree that, especially like I think I know who your coach or like past coach was, there can be kind of like this air of like this guy knows what the fuck he's talking about. Like I better shut up and listen. What do you think?
yeah, and I think that there, in my personal opinion, I
Hmm.
really genuinely think that there should be, it's a
Yeah.
collaboration.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
not this, you know, I know my shit, trust the process, just do the work and shut up.
Yeah.
That I'm sorry, but that's not coaching. That's someone ego speaking to you, at you, is what it is. So my personal opinion is like it should be a collaboration. So it's like, hey, you know, at the end of the day, there are a lot of coaches out there that are phenomenal coaches that know their shit inside out. Not every coach cares enough to pay attention to the details that they know
Mhm.
about, if you know what I'm saying.
Of course.
So I think it really comes down to like, paying attention to the details and caring enough to continuously do that and be fully engulfed in what is happening with your clients.
Well, I think that can be one bad thing about coaches who have like a million clients and have such successful clients. It can almost be like, well, I know this always works, right? Like this always works for everybody else. Look at my, long history of winning streaks. Like, why are you different? Like why shouldn't we add T3 10 weeks out, bro? It works for everybody else. You know what I mean? So I think that's the thing when choosing coaches is really thinking about not just how many accolades they have. Like somebody could have not a ton of people that they've, competed with, but if they show that they're invested in you, like on a week by week basis,
Yeah,
that's way more
like
valuable than, yeah, you get what I'm saying.
100%.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like you can be the absolute best coach in the world with the best credentials and the best, you know, let's say top athletes or something on those lines. But at the end of the day, it's like if you don't care individually about each individual client and you don't pay attention to those details, then you're not actually a good coach at the end of the day. Just because you know how to be a good coach and you actually act act like a good coach are two completely different things, you know?
Yeah.
And I find, you know, like you said, like somebody that has like hundreds and hundreds of clients, like I'm sorry, but there's no way that you're able to genuinely give your full focus and attention to each and every one of those
Yeah, it
clients.
just
It's
gets
just physically not
hella
possible.
watered down.
It's
It
like,
just gets hella watered down.
yeah, it's like I've never ever once in my past few years of coaching exceeded like 40 people at a time. Usually my numbers hang around like 30 online clients, like
Bro,
max 40. And
I've
like
pushed that,
I'm
and
like,
I
man, I
like,
literally live on my phone. Like
yeah.
I'm constantly on my phone. Like once every 2 weeks, I have to be like, okay, I'm taking like an hour where I'm not going to be instantaneously tech checking my text, sending training videos, blah blah blah, so I can actually sit down and have like a supper with my girlfriend where I'm like speaking to her eye to eye. You know what I mean? So it's like I'm sorry, if that takes up like literally every second of my week, then there's no way that these people can have like 300 clients and be genuinely actually like knowing what's happening in their clients' lives day to day with their bodies. Like it's
Well,
just
then
not
that's
physically
what,
possible.
and this is when I will bring up the Matt Jansen thing. That's where apparently people were saying that he had other people that worked with like the whole Raw camp that
Yeah,
thought that they were hiring him, but they were actually being programmed by somebody else, which is not a problem if they were not paying for his pricing, right? Like whenever there's a team of coaches, it's like, oh, well, you can get this person, this is the head coach, he's more expensive. And then you can get these other people, you know, they're not the head coach, they're a little bit less experienced, but they're cheaper. So if you pay for this guy, and then this person is doing your programming, it's you know like it's just really, what's the word I'm looking for, it's like greasy. It's like you like
100%, man.
that you
100%.
had to get $200 more out of somebody. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like
And like I've had like so many people like ask me to take them on as a coach underneath me and like and whatnot. And I'm honestly like not to be disrespectful, but no, I'm not doing that. You know, at the end of the day, I don't care about growing
yeah,
my name,
yeah.
right? For the sake of you, it's like no, like I know every single client that I work with gets the
Mhm.
same quality of service and gets the same level of attention. It's like I pride myself in that severely, and any of my clients know how, you know, absorbed I am with their lives.
Yeah,
But it's like that's something that's super super important and valuable for my coaching, for my, you know, brand. So it's like for me to pass that torch off and expect someone else to do something at the same exact standard that I do to represent me, like sorry, but I don't have that much trust in anybody, nor do I think I ever will. You know, it might be my little bit of OCD that I have, but you know, that's the primary reason why you'll never see me, you know, do these huge like client intakes at once because I can't give the same quality then. I only take people on in small groupments. When I have a couple people leave, that's when I take a couple more people on, client wise. But it's
I
also
think
why I don't want to expand and have a team because it's like what you just expressed is like, you know, that's how I feel other people would feel. It's like, you know, they're not paying for me specifically working with them. They're paying even if it's a cheaper rate for someone else. It's like that's not what my business is about. My business is about
yeah, your name is
100%
on, yeah.
consistency. Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it because I have thought at times like maybe I should have like an assistant coach or something like that, and I can see the value, and I'm sure that there are people who are 100% committed to the same degree. My only thing, and what I know personally, like I've been doing this for, you know, a couple of years at this point, I know when I'm having an off day, and I'm very much so in tune with like what I say to this person, my tone of voice can dictate how the rest of our relationship goes, right? So I'm very cognizant of like, hey, Devon, like, you know, I just had like a family thing happen and I'm pissed off. You know, when I set up my camera, like to talk to my clients and send their feedback videos or like to have a call with someone, if I say something a little bit snarky, that could impact how they feel about their entire existence within fitness, right? So that's a little thing of like, it's almost like customer service. Like if you're hiring someone, how do you analyze their customer service? How do you analyze how they interface with people? Like, what if they're having a bad day and they just like half-ass something, and then that comes down on you, right? And then all of a sudden you see, you know, some things floating around like, oh well, I worked with blah 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 for this amount of time and I didn't feel like I was taken care of. Like, well, shit, you know what I mean? And like, that's a big thing that people don't understand within this space as well. Not to make the whole conversation about coaching, but it seems to be the buzz of like the past 2 months. Um,
Yeah. Just given everything that's going on right now.
yeah, I don't know if people watching would even know, but it's just kind of like something that I don't think people understand when they're thinking about, oh, I want to make more money. I want to, get this, and that. This is something that like I get so pissed off to my core about, bro. Like what you're telling people to do with their bodies dictates how they feel about themselves. Like,
Yeah.
and this is something I always come back to. Like, if you're crash dieting someone because you want to have like, oh, you want to have an amazing before and after. They're so dry. Or if you're putting people on PEDs that like have no business being on PEDs, like they might look amazing because you put them on whatever the fuck. Is it worth it? Like they're gonna go to their
Yeah.
9 to 5 job. They're not even gonna compete. But now you have a great before and after. Like that's the shit that pisses me off. I'd rather get someone there slower, or maybe they have 10% less like ab visibility, but they're healthier and they have a better relationship with themselves in general. I'd rather take that route. So it's kind of like you also have to be mindful when you're choosing a coach. Is someone going to get you like, oh my God, a mind blowing transformation? Cool. How are they going to get you it? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like
100%.
that's,
And I think that there needs to be more about, coaching isn't about the coach, it's about the client. It's like
people don't
you
know
have a
that.
person who's coming to you, paying you for a service.
Yeah.
It's your damn well responsibility, in my opinion, as the coach, to get them there in the healthiest, safest, and most educated way possible. You know what I mean? Not to do it the fastest or the most efficient for your transformations or whatever like this. It's like
Yeah.
most of the transformations that I post up are like minimum 3 months.
Oh, I know
Usually,
that. Yeah.
usually they're like 6 month transformations. And I've had a nice few of my clients who have expressed they have no desire to compete, that have been like, okay, well, let's start using like XYZ compound. And I'm like, no, bro,
Like
no.
for what? Like,
Like,
and that's the thing that people don't understand. It's like whenever you do get into that like enhanced territory, it, it's almost like never enough, unless you're competing and you know what your parameters are. But if you're someone who's like a lifestyle person and you're like, oh, I just want to run this cycle, and you're like, okay, well, that was cool. Now I want to run this cycle. Now I want to run that cycle. And then you're not thinking, most people do not do blood work. Like, to be really, really real, you're not doing your blood work. You don't know if you have a family history. Like, are you checking your liver enzymes? Like, all the things that we know to do. The average, and I know, ooh, we're gonna change the subject after this because it's getting me too hot. I know of people who have put people on steroids and have not gotten their blood work done, and it pisses me the fuck off.
yeah,
So,
it's
with
it's
that being
crazy.
said,
Like,
mm-mm.
absolutely crazy. And it's like at the end of the day, it's like I have clients that are competing in the future. I have clients that, have expressed after long times working together and a lot of thought process put over, like, yeah, no, ultimately, like, I do want to run a cycle. And obviously at the end of the day, like, I'm going to help someone do that safely. Like,
Rather
I'm not
than
saying
go
I
somewhere else
won't
and
work
fucking
with
those.
enhanced athletes, but it's like, unless you're wanting to get on a stage, like, I'm sorry, but I don't think it's appropriate to like run a full cycle to go on vacation. Like, it's just not worth the risk profile whatsoever. You got to take your reward and risk factors into play. It's like, okay, if I want to compete at a competitive level, then I can totally get behind that. And like, let's do it in a safe manner. You know what I mean? Let's start off small. Let's get your blood work done. Let's see how you respond to that before we go to anywhere else. But I, time and time again, see like, okay, this brand new client just signed on with me. They want to run a cycle. I'm just going to start them up on like this much on this much of this. I'm like, oh, like, how do you know how they're going to respond to that shit? Like, it's like you're going to like a pretty big dose right off the get-go, which I think is super not smart. But also, like, you have no blood work, you have no family history, like, you don't know anything about this person whatsoever, and you're just gonna, how can you even make a decision on what the stack profile is best for them given their own personal risks and their own personal goals? Like, that doesn't even make sense to me. So yeah, I could get really fired up about this topic too myself because I see some stupid shit.
Yeah, and that's what people. Ugh, I'm not trying to get too deep into it, but like I've worked with people that have worked with you. You've worked with people that have worked with me. Generally speaking, this is a kind of like an ecosystem, right? So what I wish people would understand is what you put your clients through. If they're interested, they care about fitness. Like they're kind of like wanting to work with everybody because we all have different styles, right? Like working with me is not going to be the same thing as working with you. So if someone is fucking someone up, like we're probably gonna hear about it. So like you should probably not be fucking people up. You know what I mean? And how I always think is like, even though you might be working with someone that you feel like has amazing potential, like that doesn't mean that you should view their end result as opposed to them as a person. Like, oh well, bro, if we just put your calories a little bit more, even though you feel like you're about to binge eat, then you'll just look so much more shredded. Like, bro, or like or like keep people in infinite dieting phases just because you want them to see their abs as opposed to like they want to grow. You know, like these little things that are just so much more indicative of, you know, the coach caring more about acquiring more clients based on how they look as opposed to, you know, individual results. Yeah,
And
I
what the
mean,
client actually wants at the end of the day.
mhm.
It's like I say it all the time. Like an analogy I always use is like how I view coaching with my clients is like, okay, you as a client, I view you as the captain of the ship being your body. This vessel is yours. You own it. You're in complete control of it. You're in complete parameters to say which direction it goes and how fast you want it to go there, right? So it's like whether you want to do a cut or a bulk or a maintenance phase or how aggressively or passively you want to do that, you're the captain of the ship. It's your decision. I just happen to be an experienced sailor that knows the best routes to get there efficiently, and I can give you guidance along the way. But at the end of the day, I'm just a deck man. I don't decide where the ship is going. I don't decide how fast it wants to go. That's the captain's word, and then I tell you how to do it. You know what I mean? And I find if we had more of a thought process of viewing the coach client relationship like that, then you'd have a lot more happy clients, you know?
Yeah, that's true. And another aspect of that, which is it's similar but it's different, is sometimes people will say, I have this end result that I want to acquire, right? Right. And they're like, some people are willing to absolutely die to get there. So it's oftentimes it cannot be at their pace because some people will literally like train, you know, 6 times a week, like take freaking
Yeah.
12,000
True.
steps, eat nothing. And
True.
then they're just kind of like, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care. I'm going to keep going. And it's like, actually, no, you're not going to keep going
And then it's
regardless.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then
So
I
like,
do think it's the coach's responsibility to educate
yeah.
them because usually once I educate that like, hey man, we're frying our central nervous system, you're accumulating so much fatigue that you're shutting your system down. Or on the other hand of things, it's like people are wanting to bulk and train 6 days a week just because they can get more muscle faster. It's like, bro, unless we're recovering and we're resting, we're not growing.
Exactly.
So it's usually like filling in, connecting the dots with education. And then the client themselves are like, okay, yeah, right, I agree. This pace is not the correct pace. You know,
Yes, that does.
10 minutes.
Yeah. I think it's just very interesting. Like, it's even the thing I had Landon ask me this the other day. Like, what do you tell people when they say I want to look like you? Like, how do you approach that? And then I just wish, and this is what I've been doing more often as well with my posting, is like, hey, you're gonna have to get fat. Like, not like obese, but people will think like, here you were skinny, here you were ripped. I want to go from skinny to ripped. How about all the time you didn't see where I like right now when I'm force feeding and I feel like a disgusting piglet? We don't want to go through those motions, right? So it's kind of like being realistic with those expectations. And it's always just very interesting to see how, and luckily, thank God, I think that because more influencers are becoming more transparent about like the different phases that everybody goes through, people are having a greater understanding of like this is what it does take to build muscle. Because I remember the landscape of like fitness content and stuff a couple of years ago was just like I was a skinny dude, now I'm a jack dude, and then nobody thinks meta, and then nobody was understanding what the process that goes into that. But now you have like most people are transparent, like, hey, I'm fat right now. Like, I don't
Yeah, I
look.
try to be like
Yeah.
as like transparent as
Mhm.
possible, especially on my Instagram. Like I literally am like, here's my exact weight, like here's my body fat percentages. Like I post, I know a lot of bodybuilders like don't post, like
Yeah.
they're posing, let's say in the off season, they'll just post their training videos. Like no, I'll post my fasted morning shots without a pump when I got
Mhm.
an excessive amount of body fat on for my physique, and I'll post that up because like people need to see that shit. You know, it's like it's
Exactly.
not you know a it's not healthy to stay lean all the time, but also you're just literally shortchanging your progress year after year by not allowing yourself to go into a proper surplus.
I think that's the biggest thing, and it's also another aspect of it is listen. I've experienced my engagement go down as I no longer have visible abs for the most part, and
Same.
I have yeah, and it's just kind of like it does suck because to be fully transparent, like that literally does impact how many coaching inquiries I get, stuff like that, and that is the biggest reason why I put off bulking and gaining body fat for so long because I was just on this grind of like I want to make sure that I'm always financially stable, stuff like that, because, like I don't really have a safety net. But at the end of the day, I'm like, what am I showing the people that want to work with me, and what am I showing people in general about, you know, longevity and about sacrificing now to be better in the future. Like, listen, I've been bulking for like 5 months now, and I'm pretty much, I think I have like 5 or 6 months left. And it's just kind of like, bitch, like, can I tap out? I'm over it at this point. But the time is gonna pass. You know what I mean? Like, the time is gonna pass no matter what. So you have to make it worthwhile. Like, the biggest thing that agitated me when we met up in person was thinking like, okay, like I remember when you did your bulking phase after your first show. And then I'm like, okay, now he's about to prep again. Like he did it and he ran through the cycle, and now we're here and he's gonna prep again. And I've just been walking around these abs and these like shredded delts for no fucking reason because I'm still small. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it's just the revelation to have, and even more so, like I went to
Like I honestly remember like the exact moment we were sat down
Mhm.
eating lunch and you had that like I watched the look in your eye change and I like knew when I left then and there, I was like, I know these next couple months are going to be really good for you. And literally within like, I must have been like 7, 8 weeks since we seen each other, you're making like sick progress
Yeah.
because you're like, damn, I just gotta push the food. Like it just gotta happen. Like it's time to do this. And it was, I feel like it was like us just like me talking about like pushing the discomfort and being comfortable with that. And you were like, yeah, like I remember I've already done that and I was at some points maybe uncomfortable with it, but I pushed through it and made it happen. And then you went and did that right away. And it's like now like look where you are right now. But it's like you could have easily stayed in that like same mentality, same kind of leanness, and we'd be here fast forward a year later, kind of still in the same place. And yeah, you'd have that same visual look online for sure.
Mhm.
But it's like, what did you do for your own personal goals in that time period? You know what I mean? So it's like, I feel like all of us sometimes need that reminder of like, hey, like, don't forget to prioritize what you actually want long term.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. At what point do you know when to stop bulking? I mean, there's a couple of basic things to look at, right? I think one huge thing is,
Insulin resistance, see,
yeah,
top
yeah,
of the list.
literally, yeah, yeah, that's a good way to put it. But a lot of people, okay, take progress pictures, fasted with a standard. God damn, I have to find another thing to do aside from thumbs up.
I
Like, take
know.
fasted progress
You
pictures,
just gotta
okay?
start counting with your pinky, man.
Take fasted progress pictures in the same lighting, same level of clothing, everything, right? Like, don't wear tight boxers one day and then loose fitting boxers the next day because that'll literally make you look fat and skinny, right?
Another
That's one.
little tip for angles, always set up your camera at your hip height is going to
Mhm.
be the most proportionate way for you to look at your physique to make sure things are balanced. And then literally what I do is I walk up to my tripod, I put it up exactly to my hip height, and then I put my phone on there. So then every single time it's standardized because you would not believe the difference in like 3 inches down or 3 inches up makes and how your physique looks.
A good one. That's a good one. Also fasted weigh-ins, and I talk to people about this so often because people weigh in on random days, randomly whenever they feel like it. So they'll be like, "Oh, I'm in a bulking phase, right? I want to gain a pound per week," and they'll weigh in. Bro, they'll weigh in like sporadically throughout the week, and then they'll be bloated overnight, or then they'll have water in the morning, and then all of a sudden it looks like you've gained 5 pounds in one week. Same thing goes for like a dieting phase. So standardize when you're weighing in and cut off your meal time and your last drink time at the same time every single night. So that way you don't, like if you had something at 9 o'clock at night, yeah, like you're gonna be weighing a little bit more in the morning, right? So the name of the game, obviously, of course, yeah, insulin sensitivity, but the factors that go into what could dictate your concept of how much fat you're gaining, right? So that's a big thing is like just making sure that everything's the same. Like with the tripod height, making sure it's at your hip. Well, if you put it too damn high one day and then too low the next day, you're gonna think, damn, my biceps disappeared. So making sure that everything is the same, like every single time, is a great way to track your progress truly and not just be like everything's changing every 2 seconds.
Yeah, and then I think for like most people, it's like, your body's going to give you like very clear signs that, it is time to call the cut. I mean, call the bulk and kind of switch over into a cutting phase. Ultimately, when obviously there's lots of points of times where I get to a bulk where I am kind of forcing my food at a certain point in time. But, when that translates into indigestion or that translates into impacting my sleep or that translates into just rapid body fat gain because I've become insulin resistant, then that's grounds for to call it, because you're no longer in a, let's say, a favorable anabolic environment within your body anymore. It's not in a place where it's growing great lean mass tissue. You're just accumulating body fat and probably retaining a shit ton of water. So your body's dealing with that, and probably, your blood pressure is a little bit higher, like all those other things that come with being at a higher body fat percentage and retaining more water. So, all of these factors going into play, your body's just trying to keep you stabilized in homeostasis. It's not like on like prime muscle protein synthesis mode. So like I think that's something that people seem to forget. Or like I have had people come to me that have had like a decent amount of extra body fat on, and they're like, "Hey bro, like I just want to go right into a bulk." And it's like, "Okay, well, you're not in a position to do a bulk effectively." Like, you know what I mean? They're like, "Yeah, like I've been bulking for the past like year and a half, but the last 6 months, like none of my strength has gone up." It's like because your body is not in a place where that's what it wants to do. So that's another big thing. It's like, how much progress am I actually getting in by staying in these high body fat percentages? You're just not. And some people don't like to face that music, but that's the truth. So, a healthy body is going to gain more muscle. Number one.
One, yeah,
Number
bro.
two, lean gains are a thing for a reason that are talked about, because when your body is leaner, it is actually more optimal for it to build muscle tissue.
Yes.
So, for a male, hovering around that 15% body mark, that's actually the most optimal place to be, anywhere from 12 to 15%. Once you're going above that, then we're in the grounds where it's like suboptimal. Yes, we can still make progress for sure, but when I'm going into these like 25, 30% body fat percentages, I'm sorry, but that is not an optimal place for you to actually be genuinely building muscle tissue. We might be able to go through a body recomposition phase if we're brand new at the gym and we haven't been doing any, exercise or resistance training or eating clean or anything on those lines. But to say that it's grounds for a great muscle building bulk phase, it's just not. And I don't think anybody can actually bulk for a genuine, like, even like 1 full year straight bulking. Okay, maybe some of these pro bodybuilders that have already built up so much muscle tissue and also use a shit ton of drugs to back up the processes that are taking place, so that they don't become insulin resistant. But I don't think anybody just walking around can do even like, I've never even had a client do more than a 6 month bulking period ever. Ever. If I've had someone do like an 8, 9 month bulking phase, it's been broken up in two phases, and there was a mini cut process in between there to clean up insulin sensitivity so that their body was in a good place to continue building muscle tissue. So I think that's like probably like something that people miss. It's like, yes, it's okay to put on body fat gradually within certain parameters, but I'm not just gonna just excessively just keep going and going and going. There comes a point in time where we gotta put the brakes on.
I think the biggest thing that we probably should have led with is you have to be training like a madman in order to require the extra nutrients to bulk. Like some people be like, I want to bulk, and I'm like, okay, so before we do that, let's go ahead and chill at maintenance. You're gonna send over training videos, and we're gonna see what your training intensity looks like. If people don't do training videos and I don't see what they look like, we're not going to add your food, because what do I look like making you fat? Because you're training like 10 reps in reserve and you're like slamming food. Like, for what reason, bro? Like, you're not training hard enough to build muscle. So that's a major thing, right? Like, making sure that you are actually training hard. If you're not knocking on death's door, if you're not thinking like, oh my God, like, I don't know if I can make this final rep. I'm not saying you have to push to failure every single time. That's another conversation within itself. But you should be damn near like 1 rep in reserve for most exercises to require the extra nutrients to bulk. Like, that's a big thing. And a lot of people have this perception of like, oh my God, I talk to my clients about this every single week, bro. Like, your perception of what you think failure is, think about if I was standing there with you and I forced you to get another rep and then do another one. Because people think like, oh, I'm training so hard. No, you're not. Like, you can like, even that's why I record my own training videos. Like, Devon, you know what, bro? You felt like you were dying. That fight and flight was activated, but you could have gotten one more, man. And that's the major thing to look at. Like, bulking is not just an excuse to eat more food. You should be training so hard that you have no choice but to increase your food because you need to recover from that training. That's like the
Yeah,
big thing. Yeah.
exactly. The surplus is replacing the grave that you're digging yourself into,
Yes.
but that needs to be dug out first. in order to elicit a
That's a
response.
very good analogy. That's a very good analogy. And it's funny, you probably had this as well. Like people who, like they've been going to the gym, XYZ, and I'll have some people who, they're consistently sending training videos. And I'm like, okay, looking at your training log, like we're gonna increase here, and then send me the video for the increase. And we're gonna increase again. And all of a sudden they're like, Devin, I'm tired, I'm exhausted. And I'm like, oh, like congratulations. That means you're actually training hard. So let's go ahead and increase your food, make sure you're having good sleep, make sure you're staying on top of your water intake, and all of a sudden we're growing. So it's like, bro, if you have not felt fatigued as fuck, like needing a deload ever in your life, you've never trained hard enough to really need to increase your calories like that, unless you're like, anorexic and stuff like that, which is a different conversation. But bro, people, and it's the whole thing now. It's like there's so many camps of like, oh, well, you have to leave 3 reps in reserve, or you have to push until your freaking rotator cuffs are gonna explode. It's just kind of like, don't overcomplicate it. Like just try to train as hard as you possibly can, record it so you have that objective perspective, and keep it moving.
Yeah. And honestly, I find sometimes with a lot of my clients, it has like I get people on the other end of the spectrum
Mhm.
where it's like, okay, we need to reduce this load. We're no longer getting the stimulus that I'm trying to drive for because now we're just trying to drive weight up as much as possible.
Yes.
But on the other side of things, it's like, it's like I use an app for everything that I do for my coaching. I'm not sure 100% sure how you are flowing with things right now, but like basically like every single time someone logs a workout, like I see what their weights are, I see what their notes are, I
Sure.
see
Yeah.
everything that's happening. And then it's like I'm like, okay, why was there just like 3 or 4 workouts logged in a row? Like where
Mhm.
was your rest day there?
Back
And
to
they're
back
like,
to back.
oh well, I felt fine to like push another day, extra day, so I skipped my rest day and just bouncing around. It's like no, like I got to reel these guys in and be like, listen, bro, like you're doing yourself a disservice. You're thinking you're pushing harder and being more hardcore. And it's like, you increase your weights too much. And now when I'm looking at your training videos attached to this workout log, it's like I can see that, form isn't exactly where I wanted to be on those last couple reps. So we're just like slam it out. It's like
Mhm.
you got your buddy over here doing like 3 or 4 force reps on every
That's
single set. It's like, okay, now we're digging too much of a grave that even your food is not getting you back out of. So like the way I look at it, it's like, okay, let's say you go into a gym and you're at like 90%, let's say, and I dig myself down to like 50%. Okay, my food is going to be able to get me back up from there. But if you're going in and you're taking every single thing to 100% and now I'm at a 0% mark, I'm sorry, but that food's only bouncing you back up 50%. So you actually like went down in your
not
progression
to
from where you were because you're not able to recover from it. So like
totally
there is
like
definitely
that.
happy mediums within this shit. And that's why I think having a coach you can have like that, you know, outside view of what you're doing on all planes, whether that's in the gym and outside the gym, to kind of give you that structured guidance. And sometimes just those friendly reminders of like, hey, bro, like really love to see the passion and the enthusiasm, but like this is actually what's more conducive for your goals, you know?
So many people right now, and it's kind of like your head is in the right place. Let's go ahead and apply that elsewhere. Okay, so I have people that will be almost like powerlifting, and I'm just kind of like, hey, like stop bouncing the weight off your chest, homie. Like, did you feel anything when you did that? And then it can be almost like an ego check, right? Because a lot of these people who do lift like that, they've been training for a couple of years and they have seen gains like that. But 9 times out of 10, the reason they're reaching out is because they've plateaued, right? So it's like, I understand you've been training like this. Let's go ahead and switch things up to the point where you actually are using full range of motion. Like you've been squatting 2 plates, but you're not breaking parallel. Okay, let's pull that back. Let's see how 185 looks pretty much ass to grass. Using lighter weight. Your quads are growing. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's not just all about the weight that you're using, it's also about what you're doing with that weight. And for someone who's more experienced in the gym, it might be, I'm looking at your window. There you
Man, sorry, I'm trying to
go.
like, I did some like weird setting where like everything has gone up over both of us.
Oh, shit.
So I was trying to get rid of it, but I don't actually, as long as I can hear your beautiful voice, we're all good.
I don't even, I'm trying to see how you
Okay,
even,
I fixed it. I
okay.
fixed it. Okay, I was like, what is going on? And this is why I use one app and one app only because we get multiple programs going and your man's lost because I'm not tech savvy. So good thing
Fair enough.
all of my everything I do is just in one place.
Fair enough. Right one though. Oh yeah, more does not equal more weight wise. I think that's a good culmination of words there. Yeah.
100%, 100%, and honestly, like something that I've been pushing like a lot more in, I definitely have noticed like in the past year that I've been coaching in comparison like to the first 2 years I was coaching, like definitely seem to have like a little bit more, intermediate lifters, people that are a little bit more advanced in their processes of where they are in their journey, let's
Mhm.
say. Um, so like I've honestly been focusing a lot more on not just not viewing progressive overload as like, an extra rep each week or an extra pound added on once we're outside that rep
Yeah.
range. It's like I put so much more focus on progressive overload through stimulus. So it's like I would much, much, much rather see someone stay at the same weight 3 weeks in a row, but every time I get a training video each week, we're
Yeah.
getting greater stimulus recruited. At the end of the day, that's going to result in 10 times more hypertrophy, and that's going to have you much faster get to your goals. So it's like for me, I find, it's like let's break down what I'm actually trying to do here and what the intention of the exercise is and how much activation and stimulus can I drive to the muscle, because that's what's going to force the adaptation on the muscle, and that's what's going to get you the results that you're looking for. So I found that approach and kind of pressing that kind of mentality on a lot more of my clients has translated into people getting a lot more results, but also a lot of people saying that like, oh yeah, like, sometimes I haven't mentioned it before, but sometimes every now and again, like after I do an overhead press, like I might feel it a little bit the next day in like my AC joint area. It was never really an issue before, so I didn't really bring it up. It was just like a little light thing. But since we've switched our training style, that doesn't happen at all anymore. It's like, okay, so that goes to tell me that you were A, bouncing things around, or B, we weren't recruiting the muscle properly. So therefore, a neighboring tendon, ligament, or joint was needing to kind of support what you weren't actually loading on the muscle. So now that we are loading everything perfectly and we're getting that stimulus, it's like, oh, well, your shoulders are growing faster and you have no AC joint problems. Okay, well, that's a win-win for me. That's much more important and going to elicit a faster change. So that's where the money lives in my eyes.
Definitely. And I think sometimes people have this issue with like range of motion. I'm sure, for example, if you're describing a shoulder press, right? Like people will half rep shit, have their elbows like hella flared out, and just be pushing a lot of weight within like this range of motion, right? Sometimes people will be scared, like tuck your elbows a little bit, bring the weight a little bit further down to here.
Yeah.
Oh, but isn't that gonna fuck up my shoulders? No,
What
actually,
you're
you're
doing
not
is
going, yeah, you're actually putting yourself at deeper risk. Or a big thing is always like full range of motion, like leg pressing or squatting or anything like that. It's like, oh, but what if I go past parallel? Like, what's going to happen to my knees? Like, oh, like your knees are actually meant to fully go through that range of motion. And yeah,
imagine a
actually,
joint doing what it's
exactly.
supposed to do.
Seriously. So I think it's a lot of unlearning, and it does tend to be a lot of people who have been training for, a longer period of time. And there's always a certain level when, no matter what coach you're hiring, right? Even if you're hiring like a life coach or a therapist or whatever the hell, you have to like humble yourself and understand, like, if I want to see change that I've never seen before, I may have to change things up that I'm used to, usually doing. Like maybe I've been pressing, I don't know, freaking 80-pound dumbbells, but if your form is ass, you haven't been growing, like maybe drop down to 65 and let's see what's
Probably,
up.
probably, probably time to reevaluate that, bro.
Yeah, maybe a little. Yeah.
Yeah, legit, legit. Also, I know I had like a nice few questions that came up on my Q&A, so I want to make sure that I run through some of
I'm bad.
those.
I forgot to take
Some
notes on.
Did you have any? I know you had a quite few questions over there too. Did you have anything that you wanted to run through at
I don't
all?
see. I don't even know if I have access to. I know a lot of them were the not to be an asshole, but like obvious questions, like how to make your hips look smaller. Guys, first of all, I have like 80,000 million videos on that. Um, the easiest thing that I could say
Dude,
is,
if anyone's made enough of those videos, it's you. So just go look on homie's page for like five
yeah,
minutes.
I'm sorry, but those
But
are probably novel questions. Go for those.
yeah, yeah. So I definitely had like I feel like I got that same question like 15 times, and I feel like I've already spoke about it like 100 times. It's like build your lats, build your shoulders, and
Yes,
don't be afraid to train legs. Like
yes,
that sums it up. Get a
yes.
coach if you don't know how to do that. Me or Devon can definitely help you out. But yeah, no. In all seriousness, though, I did have a couple people ask me um, a, a bunch of questions about like recovery from prep. Um, yeah, there was like it was worded in a nice few different ways, but I think I got like the general. I'm just gonna kind of mash them all into one kind of answer, because I think a lot of people were asking like, a, how do you come out of a bodybuilding prep food wise without giving yourself issues, because I have heard that other people in the past have had those issues. And then I also had a nice few people in regards to like asking like, oh, how do you let your body physically recover like CNS wise after it basically like being pummeled into the ground for months on end. So to kind of like wrap all that in all in one, you know, realistically speaking, I think that post show is going to look very, very different person to person. You know, if anybody was listening at the beginning of this podcast and is still here now, obviously I had a very, very case specific problem that doesn't usually seem to be a problem for most people. So again, the approach post show is going to be very, very, very different for everybody. For a vast majority of people, you know, you just worked your ass off for anywhere from like 4 to 6 months, depending on how long of a prep you did. I think that it's more than reasonable, if not extremely healthy, to go out and enjoy a complete meal that's not tracked. Go out to a restaurant with your friends or your family, you know, celebrate, you know, you did the damn thing, you got on the stage, you worked your ass off during prep. I think that's more than reasonable. I think where the issue lies in is people going from like an extreme diet to being like, okay, I'm not in prep now. I'm just going to throw everything out the window and just do whatever the hell I want. And whatever looks good, I'm just going to throw it down my throat. That's usually the point in time where we see problems take place, you know, and that's oftentimes where people, if we don't have some form of structure post show, we're probably going to see a really, really rapid increase in body fat. And that's honestly when people experience a lot of that like post show blues that people talk about, because you just essentially did like undid like 5 months of work in like 3 days or like a week, right? So, in terms of like healthily allowing our body to come back to recovery, it's like I've said a bunch of times during this podcast already, like it's not healthy to stay at 5% body fat long term. I immediately want to get myself out of that state post show. Um, Now, realistically speaking, for most people that are competing, it's like, okay, well, I want to set myself up for a good off season. So, no, going from 5% body fat up to 12% body fat in a week, that's not optimal in terms of maintaining some form of insulin sensitivity. I don't want to just crash my system when it's already been put through the ringer so hard. So it should be a very gradual process of me essentially bringing my calories back up, aka reverse dieting out of my diet, and then gradually tapering that cardio down. For most people, that's going to look like a 6 to 10 week process, depending on the individual, to return to a full, genuine maintenance state. Now, realistically speaking, you know, the goal of a post show phase is to drop off fatigue. So, you know, ultimately, the first thing that we should be looking at is kind of pulling back our cardio. And this even goes for somebody who's done like a very intense cutting phase, you know, we're reverse dieting out of this. We want to drop that cardio off week to week as we can so that we can drop that systemic fatigue, allow the central nervous system to genuinely recover. Because, you know, ultimately, by the time I was at the end of prep, I was doing 3.5 hours of cardio every single day, on top of training every day, on top of working 12 hours a day. So, you know, that tends to take a little bit of a toll on the body and the mind. So, you know, coming out of that, it's like, you know, I like to bring my cardio down substantially right from the get go. I was clearing 25,000 steps every single day for a 3 month period. So, you know, ultimately that's not very sustainable on anybody's life, like time wise, but also physically on your body or your mind. So, you know, for the people that are asking like how I specifically went about my approach, well, kept things somewhat similar. I think it's good to stay in the same flow of routine, but maybe significantly reduce how much output that routine is requiring. So for what that looked like for me, well, I was in Burlington, like I said, for the week and a half after my show before I went on vacation. And even when I went down on vacation, I was still getting up in the morning and doing cardio first thing in the morning every morning. Now my cardio wasn't okay, I'm gonna go to the gym and do, you know, I'm trucking, I'm breaking a sweat here, really trying to burn fat, because that's not what my goal was anymore. My goal was just to simulate some type of routine for my body so I could bring it back to a normal flow state. So that was just me going outside and walking around the neighborhood of the Airbnb that I had rented. You know, when I was down south or down in Central America, sorry, that was me going out around the resort. I'd go out, you know, anybody who was following my stories, you'd see that I just go aimlessly walk around the resort, checking out the monkeys and the birds in the morning for like 45 minutes. But I was like chill, casually walking around. It wasn't like, oh, I'm trying to burn body fat right now. It was just a matter of routine. So, I think that those healthy habits are actually really, really good things to keep in place. Even in my off-season phases, I still think it's important to have some level of cardio in. Now, because I had a very specific situation, I did actually, when I got back home to Canada, I pulled all of my cardio out completely, and I actually put a max step count on myself, and I increased my calories back up to a maintenance point with actually extra fat in it, just because I was dealing with that hypo issue that I couldn't really get my blood sugars to stabilize. So I ended up, you know, balancing that out through smart nutrition partitioning, right? So I was adding carbs in like I usually would have, which usually would have fixed the issue for me. Slowly bringing my fats up as well, but it just wasn't doing the trick. So I had to like slam a decent amount of fats in there to kind of slow down that absorption and digestion, which naturally balanced out my blood sugars levels a bit throughout the day and much better. Especially having a lot of fat before bed was really making a big difference for me. But yeah, so that's basically what it looks like. It's like, the goal is to drop off fatigue and get my body back to a maintenance state. So that's going to look different for every single person. Some people, I might be able to drop their cardio off pretty quickly, and they're kind of staying exactly where we need them to be. Other people that might look like, okay, we can have a little bit more food in play at faster rates, but again, it's going to be very, very dependent on that individual's, genetic metabolism at the end of the day, right? But I definitely think that setting yourself up with some structure and following some type of routine and having an actual plan in place is definitely ultimately the biggest thing, I think, in having a successful post show phase, ensuring that we're not putting on excessive amounts of body fat, because that's not the goal, to just put on a boatload of body fat. Because realistically speaking, now I'm in a position where in a month's time from now, I want to start my off season. I want to start my off season from the leanest place possible, but a healthy lean place, not a stage lean place, if that makes sense to everybody that's listening. Did that make sense to Devin, or am I rambling at this
No,
point?
yeah, that does make sense. Yeah. No, I get
Yeah,
what yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Monkeys.
Say monkeys?
Yeah, monkeys. I saw the monkeys that you're talking about.
Yeah, man, there were so many monkeys down there. It was crazy.
I was
Like that post that I posted up earlier, like we were doing this thing where I would like go down to there was like a buffet there. Like there was like a bunch of different like restaurants and stuff like that you could go to, but there was like, your general breakfast buffet. So I'd always go down there. Funny enough, I was getting like three breakfasts every time, every morning. Because I'd be up at like 4 in the morning because I was still on like prep schedule.
Mm.
So I'd get like the 24-hour room service to my room because like the real breakfast spot wouldn't open until 5:30. So I'd get like multiple orders of French toast to my room. They definitely thought it was for like me and my girlfriend, but she would still be asleep. So I would just be eating it all. And then like an hour later, I'd go down and get like the actual breakfast buffet. But they obviously had like, just take whatever you want. So every morning I'd go in there, I'd make sure that I'd wear like cargo shorts or something down to the buffet and change them afterwards, but I'd like load up my pockets with like bananas and take them back to my room. They were like, "Don't leave bananas around or the monkeys will keep coming to your rooms." I was like, "Oh, perfect. I'm gonna bring bananas up to my room." So like by like day three, they were just like they would just be like on the balcony, like waiting for me to get back from the buffet. I'd be like, "Yes." I go out and like start like giving them bananas and
Oh
shit.
my
Oh man, it was so cute. I should have got more videos because they were like around so much. But it was nuts because like we were on like the fifth floor and they just like climb up and like be like, "Oh, I'm ready for my morning banana. Let's go." And there was also like a couple of like moms that were going around. They'd have like the baby would be like on their back and they'd just be like climbing up the side of the building, getting bananas, give a little bit to the baby. They'd climb back down, go up in a tree. I was like, man, this is so wild to see. And it's like crazy the strength that these like infants have. It's like, man, you guys are climbing up like 12-foot story buildings on your mom's back. Like, that's wild. Like, jumping around tree to tree and they're just like latched onto their moms. Like, it was so cute. But I was also like, don't fall. You're sketching me out.
They can eat it though.
What do you
Since
say, sorry?
they can eat it, I don't think they would die.
Yeah, I don't know.
I
I never seen a single one of them fall the whole time. Like, they got some ninja skills.
I know you have to go though, right?
I got like 10 more
Okay, fair
minutes.
enough. Yeah. There's one thing that I wanted to ask you, and I sent you this earlier so you could ruminate on it. I don't know if you thought about it, but this is selfishly too. Any tips slash tricks that you have for not prep like dieting tricks or anything like that, but like actually competing, like going to the venue, like backstage stuff, tanning stuff, everything like that. If anything popped out to you, like this is useful, I'm gonna do this again in the future.
Yeah, so a couple little things that I think is super, super smart to do ahead of time is I'm a big like pre-planner kind of guy. I like to know like where I'm gonna be, what it's gonna look like, who I'm gonna need to talk to, like what time this needs to be done. Like I want everything like visualized in my head on how it's gonna go beforehand. And I just find it for me personally that just like takes any little bit of anxiety I have and just like squashes it so it's not something that's going to like resurface and bother me in the moment. So basically what I'm talking about is the tanning, because the tanning is definitely a thing that personally myself does spark a little bit of anxiety, not gonna lie, I'll be completely honest about that. So realistically speaking, what I like to do is I reach out to the tanning team. So Absolute Touch is who did the tanning for my last show for the Legend Super Cup in Toronto that I just did a month ago. um and I basically just reached out to their Instagram page. The lady who runs the entire company, she basically got back to me and she was like, "Hey, here's my personal cell phone number. If you want to give me a quick call, we can talk about this." Because I was basically just like completely transparent, was like, "Hey, just wanted to touch base and see how what your preferred option would be. I just want to disclose that I am transgender. So, due to that fact, there's nothing there for me to put a sock on per se. So, if everybody's kind of going to be doing that type of flow of a system, which is usually how it goes, like, how would you feel most comfortable to tan me? So, I basically like asked them in a way of like, out of respect for them, what would they feel most comfortable with? But both times I've done this pre-show and I've reached out to them, they basically responded with, "Whoa, what are you most comfortable with? Like we are totally comfortable with anything, but what do you want? What would be best for you?" So it's like just kind of like this mutual respect thing that I've kind of been given. And then, both times basically what they did is like they have these like little tent things that you have to get in to like be spray tanned.
Mhm.
And usually they have them like most times when I've had it done, it's like they've been like kind of like in a big room, like somewhat like just like placed around in like a very like unorganized circle, but like they're kind of just all around the room. And then there's like guys walking around with their socks on, like in between their tans and whatnot. So basically, the first show I did, they actually just like moved it into a different hallway. So like there wasn't anyone going through the hallway. It was just like me there by myself, which was super best kind. And then this year they kind of did something similar where they were like, we're just gonna put you in the like literally like facing the corner, and we're just gonna shift these around so like it looks like this is kind of how we set them up. So they're like, we're gonna have you come in as the very first person to come in, so you're in here before anybody else. You can be fully dried off, and then you can dip, and then we're gonna start everybody else that kind of comes in overlapping over each other. So they basically, I just avoided being overlapped with anybody, and I just got to go in by myself in the corner. When I was done, I just went out through the back exit after I got reclothed. So like realistically speaking, it was like super, super, super chill. Like I didn't actually come in contact with anybody else. I guess for some people, it's like you're missing out on that like you get to see the other competitors and like talk. But
Sorry.
it's like I'm like good to not have conversations with people when I'm like pretty much completely naked. So yeah, we can do that later on backstage or after the show. Like that's cool. We got lots of other times to do that. For me, it's just like I just want to feel comfortable and not anxious. And like usually if you just reach out ahead of time, you're like, hey, just out of respect for you, just want to, ask what the best way to go about this is. They're usually like super, super, super accommodating. Like all of the girls that were doing the tanning at my last show were like literal angels, like sweethearts. Like they were all so amazing. So, like, honestly, I have not had a bad experience with a tanning team because there's like, it's either like like you have like a bunch of these, like, not that they're actual moms, but like mom energy where they're like, oh, I got you. Like, you're totally good. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. I just feel like communication is your best friend in a lot of situations. So if you can just communicate ahead of time and then set yourself up for success, that's usually the best avenue to take, in my opinion. You know,
Did they have you hold anything there, or were you just butt ass?
I'm just butt ass naked.
Damn, bro, even that would mess with me. Like, damn, this lady is gonna see me for real.
See, I'm just like, I don't know. I'm not saying that I've like
Did you
got
have to find
around, but
a
like
happy place or something?
I've slept with enough women now that it's like, it is what it is, at the end of the day. Um, but it's also like, I guess that's like a very much so a personal
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
But for me, it's like, ultimately it's like they just spray tanned before I even got in. They were spray tanning the girls since like 2 in the morning. It's like you just spray tanned like 200 bodies. You're about to spray tan another 200 bodies. So it's like at the end of the day, it is what it is.
right.
It's just a body at the end of the day. It's like I feel like if you let your mind work it up into something that it's
That's that.
not,
Yeah,
it's gonna feel like something more anxiety riding. But like if you're just going in there with the perspective of like, hey, I'm just going into this is just a part of the process. I just get a tan to go on stage. Like it is what it is. Everybody else is doing this. It's also like think about how many people are doing the exact same thing right now at this given moment in time. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, definitely. It'd be nice if like my girlfriend could just do it for
right.
me. Maybe I'll get her to like become a professional tanner. Um, but honestly, like every time I'm in there, it's like they're looking like directly in my eyes, like having a conversation with me the whole time. Like they're doing their thing, but they're like maintaining eye contact. So it's like it's not like they're there like oh yeah, let me see everything that's happening here, like checking everything out. So it's like they're pretty respectful about it and pretty chill about it. I think the only thing is like I said, like communicate ahead of time to set yourself up for success. Because if I had to just go in and not communicate and just go in in the middle of all the other men, like obviously that would have like severely kind of made me super, super dysphoric. And I probably might not have been able to like actually mentally do that when the time came.
Mhm.
Whereas like knowing that I'm just going to be in there with one individual person, just that one same person is going to keep doing my tans over and over again. It's not like I have to meet a bunch of different people, because usually the flow of the system is it's like you get multiple layers of tan put on. So like I might go back and forth, and I might be working with different people. But how they did it at both my last shows, they were just like, this girl, this one person is going to take care of you specifically, and that's your only person that you need to interact with. So for me, that also made it a lot better going to meet them like a few minutes beforehand, having a chat, realizing they're super, super chill. It just also happened to work out that I had someone that was like super LGBTQ friendly as well. So obviously that was a benefit for me. But I think obviously when I reached out to the person who owned the show, um,
I don't know, Hasty. I don't know if I could self tan. It's gonna come out ass,
yeah.
no?
So self tanning versus getting a professional spray tanned on are very, very different outcomes. And when you're on stage under the stage lights, it's going to make a significant difference in the amount of detail that you're going to show. Whether you have like a professional, I had 6 layers of spray tan put on, which is like a full bottle of spray tan. And then they also glaze you and all that stuff as well. So the look that you're going to have is going to be completely different than if you spray tan. I know some people that spray tan to get a base layer on before they go, but it looks nothing comparable to like the final product of when the spray tan team has actually worked on them. So, that's just from what I've noticed from my experience.
Thank you
To
for coddling my feelings, though, Hasty. If it was only that's my sister-in-law. If it was only a friendly little competition, maybe I could deal with that. I can't imagine like the tan dictates so much of how you're presented, literally. So
yeah,
I have to take my
it was
anxiety
so
for
it wa-
sure.
it was so funny. I like went in. I was like I like went in. Obviously, I was like clothed like this, like big hoodie on. Like I'm like a day out from the show, getting my first base tan on, so I'm freezing because I like get so cold when I'm lean. Like it's not even fit. So, especially first thing in the morning, which is when I was getting my first tan done. So I go in like fully layered up and I'm like Yeah, like just so you know, like I paid for the extra layer of tan ahead of time because like I'm definitely gonna need it. Like I'm definitely one of those people. She was like, "Yeah, you look a little bit fair. Like I could tell by your face, but I happen to be like have like a little touch of rosacea, so like I'm naturally always like a little red toned in my
Yeah.
face." And I like take my hoodie off, and she's like, "Oh, you're porcelain." Like, boy, you are white as a ghost. She was like, okay, yeah, you're definitely gonna need an extra layer or two. And I was like, yeah, for sure. So I'm definitely not one of those people that could get away with like doing my own spray tan because I probably still look white as fuck on stage. I'd be glowing.
Yeah. Well, I don't
Yeah,
have a problem.
yeah. Definitely better off than me, brother. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I think everybody on the face of the planet is better off than me and my Irish genes
I
over
was gonna
here.
say, except for Irishmen, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Both my grandparents are complete Irish. So
I see that for you.
yeah. It's also really bad. Like when I grow my beard out really long, it goes like starts going orange. I'm like, great. I don't know why it only happens when it's longer, but it gets this like fiery red tint to it. But like everyone on my dad's side of the family is like ginger. So I'm always like, oh no, am I going fully ginger? I trim it up and it's like not as red anymore. I'm like, okay, perfect. But still got that fair skin, so can't get away from that one.
Just tan, bro.
Yeah. But yeah, no, all in all, I know there was definitely some questions that we didn't get around to. I do apologize that I gotta run. Got a couple personal training sessions to get to before I train a big back day myself tonight. But one last thing I did want to ask before I leave, because I actually had a good probably 20 questions asking not just when I'm doing a competition next, but when is Devon doing a competition?
Ah,
Apparently, all the people want to know when you're getting on stage or if you have plans to.
yeah.
Why they were asking me this and not you, I don't know. But
I don't know. I guess. Well, I do know when I want to compete. In November, I have two specific competitions that I'm shooting for. I don't want to, like you don't want to jinx yourself. Like God forbid something happens before then. But
yeah,
November, yeah.
what
And you?
type, what league are you planning on competing in?
NPC.
NPC?
Yes.
Are you doing like something local or are you going to travel for it?
No, I'm. So both of them are going to be in Fort Lauderdale. So that's like,
I
it's like a 35-minute drive.
Yeah, that's going to be super nice. I always recommend people for your first time do something that's close by. It's a lot less stressful, speaking from experience. Way more stressful traveling for a show and trying to balance peak week and everything versus just doing it at home when I could drive like 20 minutes down the
Yeah.
road.
Well, my sister-in-law, who was just talking about tanning and stuff, like she travels down here
Oh,
like every
that's your
summer.
sister-in-law. Okay, I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah, yeah,
realize that.
yeah.
Okay, sweet, sweet,
Yeah,
sweet.
she's the one who low-key put me on. She was like, "You can do it, boy," and I was like, "Okay, like I'll see what's
Fuck
up."
yeah, you can.
But she went. I know when she traveled to Georgia, and she did like, bro, that was like her third or fourth show for the season. She was just kind of like knocking on death's door, like, "I'll do it," but I'm like over it, so I don't want to have that, like the energy of having to drive and travel and such.
Yeah. I remember when she was doing all that, you were like sending me some updates and stuff.
Yeah,
She was looking
definitely.
crazy good. Yeah. But yeah, no, that's hype, dude. I'm stoked for that. I don't know when. I really hope that the Olympia is going to be like a little bit later in the
Yeah,
year because
yeah.
if that's the case, then that means I'll actually be over there, which I'll definitely come over and watch your show for.
They're moving back to Florida, or are they staying in Las Vegas?
So they go year for year, dude. So every second year it's in Florida, and every other year it's in Vegas. So it goes Florida, Vegas, Florida, Vegas, Florida, Vegas every year.
Okay, like where was I when that information came out? That makes a lot of sense though. I'm like, why are they alternating every freaking year?
Yeah.
Okay, no.
That's how they do it, and that's how they've done it for a long while now. So like I personally have no interest in traveling to Vegas, but
Yeah.
we all know how much I love to come over there and see all my boys since I
Mhm.
have so many of you guys over there. It just makes more sense, and just like geographically it makes more sense for me to travel to Florida.
Right.
But yeah, no, I'm definitely like 100% coming over for the to watch the Olympia in person next year. I really wanted to go over last year, but it didn't work out. I was actually about to come, I don't know if you remember, and then I went online to buy my tickets and the tickets for
Sold
the
out.
Olympia were sold out.
Yes,
And I
sir.
was like, no, like losing my mind. Because I like almost had purchased the plane tickets first, but I actually went on to check the show because someone was like, "Oh, bro, do you have tickets yet, though?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "Well, you should check first." And then I did, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to fly to Florida if I can't actually watch the Olympia in person and just be in a hotel room for 4 days on my computer watching the Olympia.
No, exactly.
So, but this time, I'm like, the second those tickets go on sale, boy, I'm buying them and I'm definitely coming over. So I hope it lines up that I'm there and I can pop over and watch your show because that would be sick. I'd love to come support you in person.
If it's gonna be here, I'm gonna go to the Olympia as well. So at least we have that going
Oh,
for us. 2 years
sick.
later, but if it's yeah.
That'd be hype. Well, we'll definitely have to link up for like a pump, and then like we could like go to prejudging or something. Like go for a pump and go back for finals.
Yes, sir.
Devin will be sick of me after a full day, me.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, no. In terms of my competition plans, I'm pretty much taking a big step back away from the stage. AKA, I'm probably not going to compete in this next year. Just because of the fact that you know this is my first year where I'm like 100% fully self coaching myself. Um, and I want to see how well and how much I can actually do on my own. Because even like last off season, I was like half coaching myself, but also kind of listening a little bit to the guidance of somebody else. But I just feel like after like multiple years at this, like I really, really know my body to a T, and I kind of know like where my thresholds are and like how far I can push things. So, um, you know, from stage time last year to stage time this year, I only actually gained about 6 pounds of stage weight. Now, arguably, I was way leaner this time around than I was last year. So that could be technically more muscle tissue. But just to make it simple, by stage weight, I was 6 pounds in the difference. And even with that 6 pounds added on, I still have like 19.5 pounds to my weight cap. So if I, essentially took a full year away from the stage and I put on 6 pounds, if I were to just repeat that same process, I'm still nowhere close to my weight cap. So
Right.
me just being like a numbers guy, like I just think that I need a little bit more time in an actual growing off season mode. So last year I basically like finished my show in the end of July. So then August, September, October I did a health phase, and then halfway through November I started bulking. So then I bulked for like December, January, February, March, and then April I did like, or March and April I kind of did like a health phase, maintenance phase, which was shortly after I seen you over in Florida, and then I was like right into a bodybuilding prep. So really, I was only actually in like a growing phase for like 3.5 months.
Mm.
So, when you take into consideration like the fact that I do prioritize health at the utmost importance, that does put a little bit more time onto how long it takes me to run through each phase. So I was just thinking of the perspective of like if I took like a year and a half away from the stage instead of just a year, well, like now I'm going to start bulking in December. I'm going to go December, January, February, March, April. I'm probably going to do like a 4 or 5 month bulk straight until my body is kind of at the point where it's like, okay, this isn't as conducive, like we were kind of talking about in our conversations earlier. Reset insulin sensitivity, probably do like an 8 week mini cut, just relatively efficiently. And then that brings me into like bulking across the whole summer, which is usually when I would be in prep mode. So really, I would be then theoretically starting a prep like this time next year, which means I wouldn't be competing on a stage until like early 2026, if
Mhm.
that makes sense. So it kind of adds like I'm basically going to be doing like two off-season phases with like a cleanup phase in between, but it's like that's only really adding on like 4 or 5 months to my process, but it's going to give me double the amount of time to build muscle tissue, but also like hold that muscle maturity so that the muscle sticks better. So like ultimately I'm hoping that I could have like 10 or 12 pounds added on instead of like 6, and then that's going to have me like only within like 5 pounds of my weight cap. That's going to enable me to be like way more competitive because ultimately like I'm not in this to like just get stayed pictures. Like I know some people like it's like a bucket list thing. They just want to compete to like have that life experience, and that's a phenomenal goal to have. And I super super respect anybody that does that because the bodybuilding prep is hella fucking hard. So anybody that gets even to the stage, guess what? You've already won by getting there. Just saying. But for my own personal journey and where I would like to go with things, it's like I want to be at some point competitive on a national level stage. So in order to do that, I'm gonna have to get my weight cap like pretty much maxed out, I think. So it's just time is all it's gonna take. It takes time to build muscle tissue. That's just it. There's nothing pretty or magical about it. It just takes time and consistency. So I think that that's going to kind of set me up to be like where I actually need to be competitive at the level that I want to be competitive at. Because it's like after getting two second place medals this year, I definitely have like a minor, not that it's a bad one by any stretch of any imaginations, and it's not anybody else, just to clarify. The judging was fantastic. Everyone I competed against was phenomenal, brought amazing packages. But I personally have a little chip on my own shoulder towards myself just because of my competitive nature
Mhm.
that I was 2 points away from one of those placings being a first place instead of a second place. So now it's like, okay, well, in bodybuilding touring, that's really, really damn close. So next time I get on that stage, it's going to be undeniably that I am the winner. You know what I mean? So, and I'm not that I'm saying that I should have won. I'm not saying that whatsoever. I'm just saying that I was like so damn close that it like made me so hungry. And like the year before, I got like 4 gold medals, and then this year I got 2 silver place medals. Now I only compete in 2 things this year instead of 4 like I did last year. But it's like, okay, now I'm like super, super fired up. I kind of know where I need to be to get to that next level. And it was kind of like the reason why I picked the show that I picked is because that's the show that happens the weekend before the national show. So a lot of the guys that I was competing against then went on to the national show the next weekend. They were just using my show as a qualifier, and then they went to that show the following weekend. So I kind of got like half a taste of like what these guys look like up close and personal, what they look, what I kind of stand up posing next to them and things of that nature. So yeah, definitely just gonna need some time to just get bigger because everyone I was on stage with was like at their weight caps, and I was like 20 pounds under. So I was like, okay, time to eat and grow and take some time to marinate.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And then hopefully some point we'll be on stage together.
That would be interesting.
That would be
Would we? Would we be in the same class? I don't know.
it would really depend on the show if I'm being honest. Because A, are you planning on doing classic or are you planning on doing bodybuilding?
Classic. With my long arms, as if I could ever do bodybuilding.
Hey, where there's a will, there's a way, my dude.
Hey, there's no well for that one. I'm gonna tell you the truth.
Well, like in my opinion, it's like, I personally see myself being a lot more successful in classic
Hmm.
just from my genetic structure and what my strong points are. I definitely think that I'm going to excel in classic more so than anything else. But when I do a bodybuilding prep, it's like I just prep for 5 months and I'm going to get on stage and have 5 seconds of stage time. When you're in your amateur days, I think that it makes more sense to like do 2 classes, get a little bit more stage time, have some fun with it, and be able to do some different poses. So whether that someone wants to do like men's physique in classic or they want to do open in classic, I definitely think that it's good to get up there a little bit more, have a little bit more stage time, and also get a couple more pictures because it's like at the end of the day, most of what we're gonna have is just memories. And as present as you try to be on show day, it all happens so fast that it's over in the blink of an eye, and you're like, wait, what just happened? So if I could have a little bit more time to try to like soak up the moment or like a couple more pictures to remember it by, then I think that that makes sense. It's like you already put so much time and energy and money into your bodybuilding prep. What
Hmm.
is it to pay like an extra $100 to get on stage again? You're already
Oh yeah,
there.
I was playing around with doing just because like bro, I just don't feel like it would even be worth it for me to do like bodybuilding open whatever. I contemplated doing men's physique as well just because I know my back can be pretty. I feel like I could low key be competitive there if I wanted to. I just don't like it because I also love my quads, but I'll probably answer both.
And
Yeah.
like I will say, man, there's no lat spreads in the classic, and you have a nice lat spread. So,
This is true. I don't know.
you
We'll see.
know,
Maybe I'll do all three. Fuck it. Can you?
yeah,
Probably.
you can do literally all three if you want.
We'll see what happens.
Now, when you do three, though, it does get a little tangly because then you're like running on and off
Yeah,
stage
no,
a
I can
lot.
only imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. So I find like two is like a sweet spot. Now, some people, I know a lot of people that do three, but I always give people a heads up that like those classes will be back to back. So it's one thing to like get a little sip of Gatorade and like half a rice cake in you in between, but you might not have time to do that if you're doing all three. So then for one of your classes, you might be going at a little flat because you won't be able to kind of uptake or balance out your electrolyte balance while you're kind of essentially burning through it while posing on stage.
Of course. Bro,
Yeah,
do you know what time it is?
yeah, I know. I gotta leave because I got a half-hour drive and I gotta be there in a half hour. I just love talking to you so much. It's been too long.
No, for sure, yeah. No, we'll catch
All
up.
right. I love how you keep me in track for my time management. You're the man.
Appreciate
All right. Well, on that note, it's been a slice. We clearly need to do these more often because there's like 50 questions I didn't get through and probably 10
it.
things that I wanted to talk about. But I hope everybody that tuned in did enjoy this, got some valuable information from it, or if not, a good laugh along the way. But on that note, I'm peacing out. Everyone have a fantastic day. Get
Be
your
safe.
gains, drink your water, get your protein in. Let's go.
Be safe.
Yeah, bro.